I am looking for my daughter, I said. She is 6 years old. Yellow raincoat with little bear ears on the hood. Pink sneakers with a unicorn on the side. A light in the heel that goes red when she runs. She went missing from the campground down south 2 nights ago. A police dog tracked her straight up this road. Please, I just want my little girl back. Have you seen her? I held the picture out to him in the rain. He took it. He looked at it a long moment, and he smiled. Oh, sure, he said. The little yellow coat girl. We had her for supper last night. My brothers came up, and the neighbors from down the creek. Real nice evening. He nodded back toward the pit. Still got some ribs on the warming rack, if you come hungry. The rain ticked on the tin roof of the trailer behind him. Smoke stood up off the brick pit in a thick, greasy rope, white, too white for a wood fire. It carried a smell, wet and sweet and heavy. Pork done slow over coals, maple and brown sugar worked down into it, and under the sweet a weight that coated the back of my throat and would not clear no matter how I swallowed. Behind him, the fat came off the rack and hit the coals. It made a sound like a word being spat. I stood ankle deep in the mud of his yard. The rain ran cold down the back of my neck. My hands should have been shaking. They were not. He had wiped his hands before he took the picture, one finger at a time, in no hurry at all. Late 50s, maybe. Gray stubble. A face like a split of firewood left out through a couple of bad winters. And the eyes. That is the part I could not get past then, and cannot get past now. He had kind eyes. He had just told me his people ate my child, and there was no gap in him between the two things. None at all. The world went out. There was rain, and there was smoke, and there was this man with his kind eyes, and then all of it dropped through a hole in the middle of me. What was left was a flat white nothing with a ringing in it, and in the middle of the nothing, one sound. The dripping, the wet pop of fat coming off meat onto hot coals. Drip, pop, drip, pop, behind a man who was still smiling at me, waiting. Polite, as if he had remarked that the weather looked to break by morning and was giving me my turn to answer. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees. Not a feeling. A thing that happened to my body. A floor giving way under it. My mind reached out and took the words he had said and turned them over and could not make them mean what they meant. Turned them again. The little yellow coat girl. Had her for supper. Ribs on the rack. My mouth was open, and there was no sound in it. Her name was Lily. She was 6 years old. She had been 6 years old for 11 days. Before that clearing, there were 3 days. In those 3 days, I did everything a careful man does, and none of it mattered even a little. Everybody called me Mick. I fixed refrigeration for a living. Walk-in coolers, ice machines, the big rooftop units that sit behind grocery stores and hum all night. I worked out of a shop in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I had done it going on 14 years, and I was good at it. It is close to the only part of my life back then that made me feel like I was good at anything. I could stand in front of a dead compressor at 4 a.m. with a store manager crying about his frozen inventory, and I could find the fault and fix it and be home before my kid woke up. I was calm under a certain kind of pressure. I have thought about that a great deal since. The pressure I was built for and the pressure that came for me up there are not the same animal. Sarah and I were done. We had been done about a year, dragging the paperwork slow because neither of us had the money to do it fast. It was not a screaming kind of done. It was the quiet kind. 2 people who used to be able to talk sitting at the same table, unable to find one thing to say that would not turn into a fight, so they stopped trying. And the not trying becomes the whole marriage. Lily was the only thing we still did well together, and we did not even do that in the same room anymore. The camping trip was my idea. Sarah did not want to let me take her. She was right. She has to live with having been right, and I have to live with everything after. She stood in the driveway with her arms crossed and said she did not like it. A whole weekend, that far north, just the 2 of us. I told her I'd been camping since I was younger than Lily, and I knew what I was doing, which was true. I told her I needed this, which was the part that got her, because it was true, and she knew it, and she was tired of being the reason I did not get things. She uncrossed her arms. Call me when you get there, she said, so I know you did not drive into a lake. She kissed Lily on the top of the head. She did not kiss me. That was the last ordinary minute of my life. Me standing in my own driveway with my daughter's bag on my shoulder, thinking I had won something. Lily talked the whole way up. She was a talker. She would ask a question and answer it herself before I could, so conversation with her was really just me saying uh-huh while she ran the whole thing, and I loved it. I could have driven to the top of the world listening to it. She had a stuffed fox named Biscuit, worn down to bare cloth on the face from being loved, and she narrated what Biscuit thought about the trip. Biscuit did not like tunnels. Biscuit was excited about marshmallows. She had lost both top front teeth that spring, and it put a little whistle in her S's, and I can still hear it. That whistle is in every word she ever said to me now. I did not know a sound could do that. Get in behind everything. Stay after the rest is gone. She had new sneakers for her birthday. Pink, a cartoon unicorn on the side of each one, and a thing in the heel so that when she stomped, they lit up red. She stomped a lot on purpose once she figured that out. On the long, dark stretches of highway, I would catch them flashing in the back seat, little red pulses, her feet going even when the rest of her had near fallen asleep. Okay, Bug, I would say. Settle the feet. And she would giggle and stomp twice more just to get me. Those shoes come back on me at night. I did not know that then. Telling her to settle her feet in the dark. We were headed for a campground up past the top of the state parks, right where the map stops being helpful and goes mostly green with a few thin lines through it. I had a spot off a forum. A first-come, first-served loop on a lake. Nothing fancy. Pit toilets and a hand pump and a ranger who came through maybe once a day if the road allowed it. That was the appeal. I did not want one of those big paved campgrounds with a pool and 100 other families. I wanted my kid to see the kind of dark we could not get where we lived, the kind with the whole spill of stars in it. And I wanted to be the one who showed it to her. I had a picture in my head, her face when she saw the stars. I carried a lot of pictures out of that weekend, and that is the only one that never came true, so it is the one I keep going back to. Like a room in a house that burned down. We got there late on a Friday afternoon. The drive had gone from highway to 2-lane to a road that was more idea than road, and the last 20 miles I did in low gear with the trees closing over the top, so it was like driving up a green throat. Then it opened. The lake spread out gray and still ringed all the way around with black spruce, and Lily went quiet for the first time all day. Even Biscuit had nothing to say. She just looked at it. Then she said, real soft, "Is this the whole thing?" I did not know what she meant. I still do not. I said, "Yeah, Bug. This is the whole thing." It felt right to say, even though it made no sense. There were maybe 4 other sites taken on the loop. A retired couple with a 5th wheel who waved. 2 men with kayaks strapped to a Subaru. A family a few sites down with kids around Lily's age, and she clocked them the second we pulled in, the way kids do, a dog carrying another dog. Nobody strange, nobody I flagged. I have gone back through that first evening 1,000 times hunting for the wrong face. The truck that circled, the man who stood too long at the tree line. There is nothing there. It was a nice place with a few nice people on a cold gray weekend. Whatever came for us did not come from the campground. It was already up there in the country past it. It had been up there a long time. And we had driven right up to the edge of its table and pitched our little tent. I put us on the site farthest out, closest to the water, because I had the best view and the most trees between us and everybody else. I thought that was a good thing. I thought privacy was something a man wanted up there. I set the tent while Lily collected what she called treasure, which was pine cones, and 1 gray rock she carried the rest of the trip. I got a fire going. We did hot dogs on sticks, then the marshmallows Biscuit had been so worked up about. She got one stuck in her hair, and I had to cut it out with the little scissors on my multi-tool, and she decided that was the funniest thing that had ever happened to a person. Later, we lay on the tarp in full dark, and I showed her the stars. Her face did the thing. I got my picture. She found the Big Dipper on her own, then decided there ought to be a little fox to go with Biscuit, and started building her own, connecting stars that had no business being connected, naming them. I let the fire die down. The cold came up out of the ground the way it does up there even in summer, a wet cold that climbs. I zipped us both into the tent, and she fell asleep mid-sentence with Biscuit under her chin. I lay there and listened to her breathe. I thought, I can do this. Whatever else I broke, I did not break this. We had all of Saturday. I hold that day the way I hold the shoe. I take it out about as often, and it costs me about the same. Gray again in the morning, a soft gray with no rain in it. I made cocoa on the little stove and scorched the first batch, and she told Biscuit that Daddy could fix a broken cooler but could not make cocoa, which was true. Then we went down to the water. She had been promised frogs. We spent an hour on the muddy edge of that lake turning over rocks, and she caught exactly one, a green one no bigger than a bottle cap. She held it in her two cupped hands like it was made of gold. Then she let it go, because it looked scared. She was very serious about that. It looked scared, so it had to go back. And I thought, that is a good kid. That is a genuinely good kid. I did not make her. Or I made half, and the good half was mostly Sarah, and I knew that too. The family down the loop had 2 kids, a boy about 8 and a girl close to Lily's age, and by midday the 3 of them had formed one of those fierce instant alliances kids form on trips. They ran the shoreline. They built a fort out of driftwood. Lily came back to me twice, once for snacks, once to report that the other girl, Maddie, had a loose tooth too, and they had compared. Then she was gone again down the beach. Her whole body leaned forward the way she ran, the unicorn sneakers flashing red on the wet sand with every stomp. The mother of the other kids waved from their sight, and I waved back, and we did the thing parents do, the little nod that means we are both watching. They are fine, and they were fine, all day. Whatever came did not come in daylight, and did not come while anyone was watching. It waited for the one gap there was, the same as everything up there waits. In the afternoon, we hiked a little loop trail that started behind the pit toilets, an easy one, and she narrated the whole thing to Biscuit. The roots, the mushrooms, a woodpecker we heard and never saw. Halfway around, she went quiet and reached up for my hand without a word, and we walked the rest of it like that, her hand small and a little sticky in mine. She was thinking about something. After a while, she asked me if Mommy would be at the new house or the old house when we got back. I understood then that she had been carrying that all day, under the frogs and the forts, the way kids carry the big things quietly while they play at the small ones. I told her the truth. Mommy would be at the old house and I would be at the new house for now, but both houses were her house and always would be. She thought about it and said, okay, in a small voice, and squeezed my hand. I would give the rest of my life to have answered her better. I do not know what better would have been, but I would give it. We had our fire again that night, and she was too tired for a long one. Half a hot dog, most of a marshmallow. Then she fell against my side. I sat with my arm around her, and the fire going down, and the clouds finally tore open in the west, and stars came through in patches, and one of them moved. A real one. A good long streak of a shooting star, right across the gap. She saw it. She was still awake enough to see it, and she gasped. And she said, "Make a wish, Daddy. You have to." I already did, I said. She asked me what. I told her I could not say, or it would not come true, and she took that as the law it is. She did not ask twice. She just leaned on me, satisfied I had done it right. My wish was nothing. Some tired father nonsense about doing better, a bigger apartment, her having her own room at the new place. I did not know to wish for the only thing nobody ever does. That is not how it works. I texted Sarah at 11:40 that night, while Lily slept against me, before I carried her in. I said we saw a shooting star, and that our daughter was the best kid on the planet, and that she was asleep. Sarah sent back a heart and said, "Drive safe tomorrow." That was the last thing my wife and I said to each other as two people whose worst problem was a divorce. I carried Lily into the tent and tucked Biscuit under her chin and told her we would look for frogs again in the morning, and she was already gone, deep down asleep the way only kids get. I lay beside her and listened to her breathe. Both of us zipped in against the cold coming up through the ground. That is the last of it. That is the last good hour. She was gone when I woke up. I woke a little after 7. The tent flap was unzipped about a foot at the bottom. Her sleeping bag was empty and cold. Not warm, cold, which meant she had been up a while. Biscuit was still there, tucked into the dent her head had left in the rolled sweatshirt she used for a pillow. That was the first thing that put a hook in me. She did not go anywhere without Biscuit. Not to the bathroom at home. Not down the block. Biscuit went where Lily went, and Biscuit was still in the tent. I told myself she was at the water. Kids wake early in a strange place, and the lake was right there, 40 feet down a path through the ferns, and I had promised her frogs. So she had gone for frogs. That is what I told myself while I jammed my boots on, with my heart already going, and it held me together about the length of that path. Then I came out on the little gravel beach, and it was empty. Gray water, gray sky. A loon out in the middle of it going off in that way. Loons have that laugh that is not a laugh, and no little girl anywhere. I called her name, loud first, then louder. Then in that voice a parent does not know he owns until the day he needs it, the one that comes up out of the floor of him. Lily, Lily. The family down the loop came out of their camper. The kayak men came up the path. Inside 20 minutes, there were 8 adults walking the shoreline both directions, calling her name, and the retired man had a satellite phone and got through to somebody. By 9, there were 2 state police trucks and a warden's green pickup in the loop, and a woman in uniform kneeling in front of me, asking me to describe exactly what my daughter was wearing. Yellow raincoat, I said. It has a hood with little ears on it, bare ears. She picked it for the ears. Pink sneakers with a unicorn and a light in the heel. I got that far and my chest seized, describing her out loud like a thing that had gone missing instead of a person who was mine. The woman put her hand flat on my shoulder. She did not tell me it was going to be okay. I have thought about that since, that she was too honest or too experienced to say it. They brought a dog in around 11, a big shepherd named Ranger, which I remember because I thought, of course the dog is named Ranger, and I almost laughed and then hated myself for it. The handler was a heavy-set man named Doucette, with a soft voice, good with the dog and good with me. He kept me back but kept telling me what was happening so I would not go out of my mind from not knowing. They scented the dog off Lily's pillow sweatshirt, Biscuit they would not use. I had been holding Biscuit, and my scent was all over it. The dog took the scent and went, not toward the water. That was the thing that turned my stomach right around. All morning we had walked the shoreline, because a lost kid near water is a drowned kid until proven otherwise. Everybody knew it, and nobody said it, and I had been seeing her in that gray lake the whole time. But the dog did not go to the water. It went the other way, up the slope, behind the campsite, through the ferns and into the spruce, along a game trail I had not even known was there, nose down, tail up, hauling Doucette along at a jog. It went a long way. It went farther than a 6-year-old should have been able to go alone in the dark. And it did not waver, and it did not double back. I understood something walking behind it that I could not put words to yet. She had not wandered. Something in the straightness of that line said, she had not wandered. A lost kid loops, a lost kid stops to look at things. That line went straight as a road. It came out at the top of the ridge onto an old logging road, hard-packed dirt with grass up the middle, and the dog turned and ran that road east the better part of a mile. Then it stopped, just stopped. At a place where the logging road met a wider gravel road, a real road, one that ran off north into country I could not see the end of. The dog turned a circle. It sat down. It would not go on. Doucette worked him back and forth across that intersection 20 minutes, and the dog kept coming back to the same spot and sitting. Doucette crouched by him a long time. Then he got on his radio and said some things in that flat code they use, and came back to where the trooper was holding me, and he would not quite look at me. The scent ends here, he said. That is what he said. The scent ends here. I asked him what that meant. I already knew. I asked anyway. He said the most likely thing was that she got into a vehicle. That a scent going strong and straight to a road and then ending clean was consistent with a person getting into a car. He said it gently. He said there were other explanations. He did not name any of them, and I did not ask him to, because there was only the one, and it had been sitting in the back of my skull since the empty sleeping bag, and now it was out in the front of it, standing in the road with me. Somebody took my daughter. I said it out loud in that intersection, and Doucette did not argue, and the trooper did not argue, and the not arguing was its own kind of confirmation. The machine got bigger fast after that. A lost kid is a search. A kid carried off up a road is a different animal, and by noon there were more trucks than I could count. A mobile command trailer backed up the ridge road, a man with a clipboard sorting volunteers into lines. A helicopter came up from Bangor and flew slow grids over the country north of us, back and forth, a sound I still cannot hear from a summer sky without my stomach going out from under me. And the whole time, the whole day, we did not go up the cutover. I could not make sense of it then. I understand it too well now. That gravel road ran north off the intersection where the dog quit. It went straight into the country the scent had gone into, and it was the one road we did not put a single boot on. I got in a warden's face about it around 2 p.m. I asked him why we were dragging the lake and walking grid lines through empty woods to the south when the dog had pointed north, up that road, plain as a finger. He would not look at me. He said those parcels up there were private, mostly, or the ownership was unclear, that they could not just drive up a private road knocking on doors, that it took paper, warrants, cause, a judge, that it was being worked on, that a request was in. A request was in. My daughter was up that road, and a request was in. I tried to walk up it myself. I made maybe a quarter mile before a sheriff's deputy, not Pelletier, a younger one, came up the road in a truck and turned it sideways in front of me. He got out and stood in my way, polite, hands loose, and told me I needed to come back down, that I was contaminating a potential scene, that the best thing I could do for my daughter was let them work. And behind him, up the road in the gray daylight, I could see 2 pickups parked across the gravel, a ways up, nose to nose, blocking it, men standing by them, just standing, watching us. They were not law. They had no markings. They were men from up there, come down to the edge of their country to make sure the search stayed on the right side of a line nobody had drawn on any map I could see. The deputy walked me back down, with a hand on my shoulder, gentle, and I let him, because I did not understand yet, because I still thought these were all people on the same side, my side, the side that finds the child. By dark, the official search shut down for the night. Nobody warns a man about that a search stops, that the sun goes down and the helicopter has to land and the volunteers have families and the grid lines get folded up until morning, while your daughter is out there in the dark and everyone goes home to sleep so they can look properly at first light. They said it made sense. They said a man cannot search the North Woods safely in the dark, that people get hurt, that they would hit it hard at dawn. All of it was true. All of it was reasonable. And none of it could live in the same body as the fact of my daughter spending a second night somewhere up that road, standing in that emptying loop, watching the last of them pack it in. Something hardened in me. That is what drove me up the cutover at 2 a.m. The road that ran north, the one where the scent ended, had one name on the county maps and a different name in the mouths of the people who lived near it. On the map, it was North Cut Road. To everybody inside 30 miles of it, it was the cutover. And it was the way people said the cutover that told me, before anything else did, that I was in a place with its own rules. The troopers said it a certain way. The warden said it a certain way. There was a drop in the voice, a little pull back, the drop that comes on the name of a bad hospital or a bad family. I got most of what I know about that country out of a sheriff's deputy, standing by the coffee machine in the little municipal building in town near midnight, while the search was called off over my screaming objections. His name was Pelletier. 60 maybe, Heavy the way old cops get heavy. He was not a bad man. I have thought hard about whether he was one of them, and I do not believe he was. I believe he was a man who had lived his whole life next to a thing and made his peace with not looking straight at it, the way people do who live next to a prison or a slaughterhouse or a bad stretch of river. He told me things I do not think he was supposed to tell me. I think he told me because he had already decided how this was going to go, and telling me was a kind of apology in advance. The cutover was clear-cut back in the 70s, he said, a huge tract. The paper company came through and took every stick of timber off 40-some square miles, and then the market went sideways and they walked away and never came back to replant. The land had been rotting and coming back wrong ever since. It was not park land and not really private land, a checkerboard of tax lien parcels, and old logging leases and squats that nobody could untangle and nobody wanted to. People lived up there, had for generations, some of them since before the cut. They did not come down much. They did not send their kids to the school in town. They did not turn up on the census in the numbers they should. They had their own way of doing things, Pelletier said. And he chose that word, things, and let it sit there in the air between us. I asked him straight. I asked him if children had gone missing up there before. He went quiet long enough that the quiet was the answer. Then he said, "This is big country, hard country. People go missing in it every year. Hikers, hunters, folks who drive off the road in winter and are not found until the melt." He said it like a man reciting a statement he had recited 100 times. Then he stopped reciting. He looked at me. Off the record, he said, "Do not go up there. Whatever you are turning over in your head right now, do not do it. We will run this by the book. We will search the parcels we can get warrants for. We will do everything the law lets us do. But the law does not go up the cutover after dark, and neither should you. Those people live different. They do not take kindly to state plates. And yours are Massachusetts, which up here might as well be another country. A man goes up there alone at night looking for his trouble," he said, "and he finds it. And nobody down here can help him." I heard him. I heard every word. But something happens to a man when his child is up a dark road, and it is not a decision. It is closer to a compass needle finding north. I had already driven up that road in my head 100 times while he was still talking. My body was just waiting for the rest of me to catch up. I went back to the campground because I had nowhere else to be, and I could not stand the town. I sat in my truck in the dark loop with the heater running and Biscuit on the passenger seat, that ruined little fox face pointed at me, and I did the only thing I know how to do when everything has come apart. I worked the problem. A problem is somewhere to put the hands. I had a full tank, a headlamp, a flashlight, a hunting knife, the tire iron from behind the seat, a phone that would lose signal 2 miles up any road out of town. I already knew that. And a daughter somewhere north of me, on a road the law would not drive after dark. I told myself she was alive. That was not hope, exactly. It was closer to a job. If she was dead, there was nothing to do, and I could lie down in that campsite and die myself. So she was not dead. She could not be dead. Being dead was not permitted. And as long as she was alive, there was a road, and I had a truck, and a full tank. That was the whole of my thinking. It was not brave. Brave is for people with a choice. I did not have a choice, any more than water has a choice which way is downhill. I waited until the last state truck left, around 2. Then I put Biscuit in the glove box, which I could not explain if I tried. It just felt wrong to make him ride up there in the open. I pulled out of the loop and drove up the ridge road to where the logging road met the gravel, to the exact spot where a dog had sat down and refused to go on, and I turned north onto the cutover. The gravel gave out 3 miles in. It became the 2 dirt ruts Pelletier had promised, a hump of dead grass up the center hissing along the undercarriage. My headlights showed me the next 40 feet and the walls of dead standing timber on both sides. That was the first wrong thing, and it took me a while to understand what I was looking at, because at night in low light it just read as forest. It was not forest. It was the skeleton of one. The paper company had taken everything down decades back, and what grew up since was not real woods. It was a scab. Thin gray poplar and popple and thorn, all tangled up through the rotting stumps of the giants that used to be there. Every so often, the lights swung across one of those old stumps, 4 feet across, 5, black and soft with rot, the new junk growth, clawing up out of the middle of it. Miles of that. A whole country of big dead things with small living things feeding up out of them. And machines. That was the second wrong thing. The company had walked off in a hurry when the market died and left its equipment where it sat, and it was all still there, 30 and 40 years on, going back into the ground. A skidder sunk to its axles, in a bog with a birch grown up through the cab. A log truck on its side in the ditch, the cab crushed flat, the color gone to the same rust brown as everything else, so it read less like a wreck and more like a dead animal. A pile of logging chain as tall as my truck, welded into one solid mass by rust, sitting in a clearing for no reason I could see. Nobody had cleaned any of it up, because nobody owned it and nobody was coming. It gave the whole drive the feel of a place after the end of the world, except the world had ended here a long time ago, quietly, and nobody had marked the date. I kept the windows up and the doors locked, and I crawled at maybe 15 miles an hour because I could not see and did not know what I was driving into. And I watched for her. That is what I was doing up there, looking for a yellow coat in the trees. I told myself she had gotten away from whoever took her and was out there in the dark waiting for headlights, waiting for me. That I would come around a bend and there she would be in the road, and I practiced it. I practiced being calm when I saw her, so I would not scare her. I knew even then that this is not a thing that happens. I did it anyway, because the other set of pictures was the only alternative, and I could not have those pictures and keep driving. There were places where people lived. I would come out of the dead timber into a clearing, and there would be a trailer or a cabin thrown together out of scrap, or once a real old farmhouse gone gray and leaning, a single window lit yellow, and a dog would come out to the edge of the road and stand in my headlights, not barking, just watching me pass, and wood smoke would stand straight up off a stovepipe in the cold, still air. People, I would think. Help. Then I would think about what Pelletier said, and I would not slow down. Every one of those lit windows had a face in it. I never saw one. I felt every one. A truck with state plates crawling up the cutover at 3 a.m. is not a thing that goes unremarked. I know now I was watched the whole way in. I know now the phone tree, or whatever they used, was already going, that before I was 5 miles up that road, the people at the top of it knew a stranger was coming, and that some of what happened after was not luck, it was arrangement. The headlights came up behind me, somewhere past the second fork. I do not know where they came from. There had been nothing in my mirror a long time, just the 2 red smears of my own taillights bleeding into the dark, and then there was a set of lights back there, high and wide, a truck. My chest went tight with a stupid flare of hope, because lights meant somebody, and somebody might help, and I lifted off the gas to let them come up. They did not come up. They matched me. I slowed and they slowed. I held my speed and they held theirs, a steady 200 yards back, never closing the gap and never letting it open. After a mile of that, the hope curdled into the other thing. I sped up as much as I dared on that road, the truck banging over the ruts hard enough to knock my teeth, and I watched the mirror. The lights back there swelled for a second and then settled right back to that same 200 yards, unhurried, matched to me like a thing tied on a rope. Whoever it was not trying to catch me. He was walking me, keeping me out ahead of him, the way I walk a loaded hand truck down a ramp, leaning back on it, letting it roll but never letting it get away. Not fast, not slow, just steady and behind. And I understood. I was not driving up that road so much as being driven up it. Then he was gone. I came around a long bend, and the mirror was black. I did not see him turn off. There was no side road I had passed. He was just gone, dropped back and killed his lights. or peeled off onto some track I could not see, and the going of him was worse than the following. He would not have peeled off halfway and left me loose on that road. He had handed me off. Somewhere back there in the dark, my minder had let me go, and the only reason he would do that is that he had brought me as far as he needed to the edge of somebody else's stretch, and somebody else had me now. I never saw the next set of lights. I did not need to. I could feel the road ahead of me being awake. Feel it the way I could always feel a walk-in was still running before I heard the compressor, a pressure on the skin, a thing the body catches ahead of the ear. And I drove on into it, because there was still only the one direction that mattered. It was forward, and my daughter was somewhere at the end of it. I do not know how far I went. 20 miles. More. The road forked, and I took the fork with the most fresh tire tracks in the mud, because fresh tracks meant use, and use meant people, and people meant the thing I was driving toward, and afraid of both. And then I smelled it. It came in through the vents before I saw anything, which meant it was strong because I had the fan off. Smoke. Wood smoke. But riding on the wood smoke, that other thing, sweet and heavy and fatty, maple and char, and under it something my body knew before my mind would say it. Cooking. Somebody was cooking meat, a lot of it, low and slow, in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. And my stomach growled. I had not eaten in a day and a half, and my body did not know anything. It just smelled cooking, and it growled. 2 seconds later, my mind caught up and understood where I was and what kinds of things get cooked out here, and I got the door open and was sick into the road with the engine still running. That growl is the part I cannot forgive. Then I wiped my mouth and drove toward it, because that is what a father does. A father drives toward the smell. There is no version of me that drives away from it. Not that night. Not for anything. I followed it a half mile up the fork to a wider clearing with a hardpack yard. I saw the smoke first. A fat white column standing up out of a brick pit and flattening against the low ceiling of cloud, lit orange from underneath by the coals. Then the trailer behind it, one window lit. A truck and an older sedan parked at angles in the yard, a work light on a pole throwing everything into hard shadow. I pulled in. The one smart thing I did all night, I did without thinking, the way my hand comes off a live line before I know I touched it. I did not shut the truck off. I stopped. It pointed back the way I had come, out toward the road. I left it running. I left the driver door unlatched, pulled to but not clicked shut. I left the keys in it. I told myself, if this goes bad, I run for that door, and I am in and gone before anybody can stop me. I had no plan past that. A running truck aimed at the exit, a tire iron up my sleeve, and a photograph of my daughter in my coat pocket. I got out into the rain and the smell, and I walked toward the man at the pit. He had heard me come in. Of course he had. He was already turned toward me, an older man in a canvas apron stiff and dark with grease, holding a long fork. He did not look surprised or afraid or anything a man looks when a stranger comes into his yard at 3 a.m. He looked like a man expecting company that was running a little late. That should have told me everything. It did tell me everything, I just could not read it yet. I had rehearsed being hard. On the drive, I had built up a version of myself who was going to grab this backwoods bastard by the apron and put the tire iron under his chin and get answers. Then I got up close enough to see the gray stubble and the kind eyes and the rain running off the end of his nose, and all of that hardness went out of me because he was so ordinary. He was somebody's grandfather. He had a bandage on one thick finger. A transistor radio sat on the block beside the pit playing a country station low, an old song. Fork in one hand, rag in the other. The most harmless-looking man I had ever seen, and my own voice came out much smaller than I had planned. I said I was looking for my daughter. I said she went missing from the campground down south 2 nights ago. A little girl, 6 years old, and a police dog tracked her to this road, and I was just her dad. I was not the law. I did not care about anything but finding her. Had he seen anything, a vehicle, a stranger, anything at all? And I held out the picture He set the fork down across the top of the pit. Careful. He wiped his hands, one finger at a time. He took the photograph and held it up toward the work light and looked at it, and he smiled the way an old man smiles at a picture of a kid, warm all the way up into the eyes. And I felt, God help me, a flicker of hope. Because he was smiling. Because a monster would not smile like that. Oh, sure, he said. The little yellow coat girl. The rain ticked on the tin roof. Behind him, the fat came off the rack and hit the coals with a wet, spitting hiss. We had her for supper last night, he said. My brothers came up, neighbors from down the creek. Real nice evening. He handed the picture back, gentle, and nodded toward the pit like he was folding me into a good memory. Still got some ribs on the warming rack. If you come hungry, you look like you come a long way. Something in me refused it. That is the only way I know to say what happened. A part of my mind would not take the words as real, and threw up a story to cover them, fast, the way the body throws a clot over a cut. This was a sick old man. Some inbred hill bastard who liked to scare flatlanders, who had heard on his radio or his phone tree that a father was coming up the road half out of his mind and decided to have some fun. That was all this was. A cruel man saying a cruel thing. My daughter was alive. She was in that trailer. She was in a shed out back. She was tied up somewhere. And I was going to get her. And this evil old clown was in my way. I got the tire iron down out of my sleeve. I put the end of it against his chest. My voice came out low and shaking, and I did not know it. Where is she? I said. Where is my daughter, old man? You have got about 5 seconds. He looked down at the tire iron against his apron the way he would look at a dog that had jumped up muddy on his clean shirt. Not afraid, a little disappointed, he sighed. When he looked back up, the kind eyes had a different light in them. Not anger, something worse than anger, a patience. The patience of a man who has had this exact conversation with other men in this exact yard and knows to the minute how long it takes and how it ends. I do not lie, neighbor, he said. It is a sin. You come up here, you ask me a question, I give you the true answer, and you put a bar to my chest. That is not right. He said it the way he would correct a grandchild who reached across him for the bread. We did not want to waste the meat. You have to understand that up here, a hard winter is coming. You can smell it in the air, and she was lost, and she was little, and she would not have made it through the first frost anyway, out there, alone. What we did was a mercy. We took her in out of the cold, and we did not let her go to waste. There is no sin in that. The sin would have been the waste. He was not lying. That was the thing that finally came through the clot, the thing my body understood before my mind would sign off on it. Men who lie have a tell, a little heat, a lean in. He had none of it. He was as calm as a man telling me which way the weather would break. And he was calm because he was telling the truth, and the truth was standing all around me in the smoke and the smell, and I had been breathing it since 2 miles down the road. I made a sound. I do not remember making it. He waited it out, kindly. Then he lifted the hand with the bandage on it and pointed a yellowed fingernail past the corner of the trailer. We could not do nothing with the little coat, he said, nor those light-up shoes. Plastic. It fouls the meat. Plastic. If it cooks. So we put it all in the barrel, out back to burn, and the fire did not take. Too wet. It is still there. If you think I am spinning you a yarn, go on, look. I will wait. Then maybe you believe me, and put the bar down, and we talk like neighbors about what happens now. What happens now? I did not hear it then. I heard it later, replaying it, and it went through me like ice water. What happens now? Because it meant there was a now. It meant this was a thing with a next step, and the next step was not mine. I went around the corner of the trailer. I do not know why I went. Some animal part of me had to see. Had to close the last door on hope by opening it. My legs walked me back there, past the lit window, past the woodpile, to a rusted steel drum sitting in the mud. Cold, no fire in it. half full of ash and wet trash, and the char of things burned in it over years. And there, on top of the cold ash, not burned, only melted a little at one edge where the fire had tried and failed, was a wad of bright yellow vinyl. I knew the yellow before I let myself know it. There is only one yellow like that. It was the hood. The little bare ears were still on it, softened by the heat, drooped over, but there. She had picked it for the ears, and next to it, tipped on its side in the ash, was one small pink sneaker. The unicorn was still on it. The heel had cracked in the heat, but the unicorn was still there, that dumb, sweet cartoon face. I reached into the barrel and picked it up because I could not pick it up. It was hers. It was the last of her that still had a shape, cold and wet, and it sat in my one hand. That is how small it was, the whole shoe in my one hand. And when my fingers closed on it, the jolt of my hand moving tripped the sensor in the heel. It blinked, a weak red light, down in the cracked heel, dying, the battery almost gone. It blinked once, then, slow, once more, a dim red pulse, in the rain, in the ash, in the cup of my hand. The same pulse it used to throw in the dark of the back seat when I told her to settle her feet. I did not scream. I did not fall down. I did not turn and go for the old man to kill him. I did none of those things, and I have turned that over 1,000 times, and the only answer I have is that a thing that big does not land all at once. It comes into you slow, like cold water rising through a floor. And while it was still rising, while I was still just a man standing in the rain holding a small blinking shoe, another part of me, the cold small part that fixes broken things, the part that does not panic, heard something. Engines. Big ones. V8s coming up the road fast, more than one, the sound of them climbing and then leveling as they hit the flat of the yard. The old man had not sent me to the barrel, so I would believe him. He had sent me to the barrel to keep me in the yard. He had been running out the clock, kind and patient, while the phone tree did its work and his neighbors came up the creek. What happens now? This was now. I shoved the shoe into my coat pocket and I ran. I came back around the front corner of the trailer at a dead sprint, aimed at my truck, my running truck, my one smart thing. I made 3 steps into the yard. Then the first set of headlights came off the road and swung across everything, and I saw the shape of a pickup coming way too fast, and I understood in the half second I had that it was not going to stop, that it was aimed. And it hit my truck. It caught the driver's side square, going 30, 35, a full-grown pickup driven on purpose into the side of mine. The noise was enormous. A flat, huge crunch of folding metal I felt in my teeth. It drove my truck sideways, 2 feet into the porch post of the trailer and pinned it there, driver door crushed shut against the wood, the one door I had left open for myself. Folded into a shape a door does not come back from. My way out died in front of me in 1 second. And the man who killed it sat in his cab with his engine running and did not even look at me. He was looking at the old man, waiting to be told the next thing. A second truck slid in behind, sideways, blocking the mouth of the yard where the road went out, boxing the whole clearing. Doors opened. Men got out into the work light, 3 that I could see. Big men in wet canvas and rubber boots, unhurried, the same unhurried as the old man. One of them reached back into his cab and came out with a long gun. He did not point it at me. He just held it low against his leg. The way I carry a wrench I have not decided I need yet. Loose, ready to set back down. There was no way to the road. No way to the truck. To my left, past the pit, was the trailer and the wood pile, and then the wall of dead timber, the scab woods, black and thick and low, the hemlock and popple grown up so dense a truck could not follow, and a man on foot could barely push through. I went for the trees. I did not decide it any more than I had decided to drive up there. My body did the math the mind was too broken to do, saw the one gap in the box, and threw me at it. I heard the old man's voice behind me, still kind, not even raised. "Now do not do that," he said. "You will just get cold and lost." I hit the tree line with my arms up over my face, and the dead branches tore at me, and I went down into the black of the cutover. 3 men and a gun, and a settlement full of neighbors coming out of their lit windows behind me. The last thing from that yard that reached me before the trees swallowed the sound was the old man telling somebody, "Easy, easy, he will tire out. They always tire out." The dark under those trees was a different dark than the yard. In the yard there had been the work light and the coals and the headlights. 10 feet into the scab woods there was nothing. A black so complete I ran chest first into a standing snag and went down and got up, not knowing which way I had been pointed. I did not dare use the flashlight. A light in that dark would have been a candle in a church, seen from everywhere. So I went blind, arms out, and the woods punished me for every step. The regrowth up there is not clean forest with a floor a man can walk. It is a tangle. Popple and hemlock and raspberry cane and blowdown, all of it knit together over ground that is half rotted stump and half sinkhole. It grabbed my ankles. It whipped my face. Something opened a cut over my eye in the first minute, and the blood ran down into it, so the little I could see swam red in salt. Behind me, the hunt came into the trees. The way they did it took the last of the hope out of me. Worse than the barrel, worse than the shoe. They did not come crashing. They did not shout to each other or swing their lights around wild, the way frightened men would, the way I would have. They came in quiet, and they came in spread out. I could hear them place their feet. One careful step, and a pause. One careful step, and a pause. The slosh of rubber boots in wet muck, slow and even. Their beams did not jerk. They moved in long, smooth sweeps, low along the ground. Reading it. They were reading the ground. Reading where I had gone, the broken cane and the print in the mud and the smear where I had fallen, following it as easy as you follow a sidewalk. And they talked the whole time, in low, flat, friendly voices that carried through the wet trees far better than I wanted them to. "You are just going to freeze out there, buddy," one of them said, off to my right, closer than I thought anyone was. "This is not city cold. This is the kind that puts you to sleep. Come on back to the fire. Running only toughens the meat," another one said, farther back, and a third one laughed. Not a mean laugh, an easy one. The laugh of men doing a thing they had done before, and were good at, and did not mind doing again. That laugh did more to me than the gun had. It told me what I was to them. Not a man, not a father, not even a threat. I was the night's work. A deer they had jumped a little before they were ready, and now they had to go get it before it spoiled, and it was cold and wet out, and they would rather have been by the fire. But the meat was the meat, and the winter was coming. So here they were, tracking it patient through their own woods. Woods they knew the way, I know, the back of a rooftop condenser. Every inch, in the dark. Blind. That understanding is the thing that saved me, if I was saved, which some nights I am not sure of. Up until that laugh, I had been running the way prey runs. Blind and straight and loud, leaving a trail a child could follow. That laugh made me cold. It woke the small part of me that does not panic, the part that stands in front of the broken thing and makes it make sense. And that part said, plain as anything, in the middle of all that terror, they are better at this than you. You cannot outrun them. They will run you down before dawn, sure as the sunrise. You cannot run at all. You have to think. You have to do the thing they are not expecting. And you have to do it now, while you still have legs. So, I stopped running. It was the hardest thing I have ever made my body do. Harder than anything after. Every animal cell in me was screaming, go, go, go. And I made it stop. Get down low, behind the root plate of a big blown down pine. Breathe slow through the mouth so the fog of it would not show. And think. I thought about deer. I had hunted a little as a younger man, not much, enough. What does a smart old buck do that a panicked yearling does not? He does not run in a straight line. He circles. He backtracks in his own prints. He crosses water to kill the trail. He goes to the thick, nasty stuff a man on foot hates and a dog cannot push through, and he lies down in it and lets the hunt walk past. Water. I had crossed a little brook coming in. I had heard it under the truck. And downhill from anywhere in that country there would be water, because it all drained down toward the lakes. If I went downhill, I would find a brook or a bog. If I got into moving water and worked along it, the muck would take no print and the current would pull my scent away downstream and their reading of the ground would come to the bank and stop. The way the dog had stopped at the road, I went downhill. Not fast. Slow, low, quiet, placing my feet the way they placed theirs, in the soft stuff, testing before I put weight down. It near killed me to go that slow, with them behind me. But slow was the whole idea. Slow is the thing the yearling cannot do, and the old buck can. Twice a beam swept the trees over my head, and I went flat and let it pass. Once a set of boots came within 20 feet of me and stopped, and a man stood there breathing and spat and said to himself or to God, "Come on now." Then he moved off at an angle. I stayed down long after he was gone. The ground went soft, then wet, and then I heard the brook, and I could have wept at the sound of it. I slid down a low-cut bank into water so cold it stopped my heart for a beat, to the knees, then the thighs, the bottom a sucking black muck that pulled at my boots. I turned downstream and I waited. It was the right move. It was also where my body began to go. That water was snow-melt cold even in summer, and it climbed up into me and started shutting things off. But I waited a long way, as far as I could stand, feeling the current drag the smell of me away south. When I finally climbed out on the far side, into a stand of black spruce so thick I had to go through it on hands and knees, the voices were behind me and to the left, and confused for the first time, casting back and forth, having lost the thread at the water exactly as I had hoped. I got in under the spruce, into a hollow of dead needles and low dead branches where nothing could see me from any side. I made myself as small as a grown man gets. I put a hand over my own mouth to quiet my breathing, and it was in doing that, shifting my body to curl up tighter, that my chest lit up red. I did not understand it for a second. There was a red glow coming up out of me, out of my own coat, pulsing. My heart came up into my throat because it made no sense. And then it made sense, and the sense of it was worse than not understanding. The shoe. The little sneaker in my coat pocket, pressed to my chest where I lay curled around it. Shifting my body had tripped the heel sensor again, and it was blinking, that weak dying red, once and once and once. A soft red heartbeat glowing through the wet fabric of my coat and the pitch black spruce. A beacon, the one thing in that whole dead country that gave off light, and I was wrapped around it. I heard the boots change direction. They had seen it. Through the trees a red pulse, where there should be no light, and they turned toward it, unhurried still, but toward it. I got my hand into the pocket and closed it around the shoe, and the light bled red through my fingers, through the meat of my own hand, and I could not turn it off. There was no switch. It lit when it moved, and died when it stilled, and the battery would not quit for another minute it did not have. So I did the only thing there was. I pushed my whole hand and the shoe down into the freezing black muck at the bottom of the hollow, buried it, packed the cold mud around it and over it, and pressed down with all my weight, pinching the light out under the earth the way I would pinch a candle wick dead between a wet thumb and finger. And I held it there, both hands, my face down in the needles, and I held my breath. A flashlight beam came through the spruce. I watched it turn the branches over my head silver. I watched it move, slow, sweeping, close. I heard the boots slosh up to the edge of my hollow and stop. A man stood over me, maybe 6 feet away, close enough that I could hear the rain hitting his coat. The beam came down and swept the ground, and I lay there with both hands buried in the mud and my daughter's shoe crushed flat under them, drowning its light, and I did not breathe. I did not breathe until my lungs were afire in my chest and the edges of everything went sparkling and gray. Then the beam moved on. The boots turned, and the man said, easy and disappointed, to whoever was near him, thought I had something, trick of the wet. And they moved off. I do not know how long I lay in that spruce hollow before I could make myself move. Long enough that the cold had gone from a pain to a kind of quiet, and I knew that for the worst sign there is. I fix cold for a living. I know what it does. It does not feel like dying. That is the trap of it. The pain is the body fighting, And when the pain stops, it is not because the body won. It is because the fight is being lost. The blood pulling back from the hands and the feet and the skin to keep the core going a little longer. And after that comes a warmth that is a lie, and a sleepiness that is the last lie, and then nothing. I had been soaked to the chest in snow melt, and I had lain still in wet needles in the small hours, and I could feel the quiet coming into my hands. The small, cold part of me said, if you stay here, you die here. And I got up. I could not feel my feet. My hands were claws I had to look at to know what they were doing. A shake came through me in waves, hard enough to hear my own teeth, and then it would stop, and the stopping scared me worse than the shaking. My thinking had gone slow and wide, thoughts arriving from a long way off. I knew all of it for what it was, and I could not fix it, because the only fix was heat and shelter, and there was none, only more black wet woods and men in them who wanted me found. So I did the one thing left. I moved, because moving makes a little heat. I picked a direction that was downhill and away from the last voice I had heard, and I went. I nearly walked into two of them. It was my own fault. I had the cold in my head by then, moving on numb feet, watching the ground and not the trees. I came up over a little rise into a stand of bigger spruce, and there was the dull orange of a cigarette not 30 feet ahead of me, down low, and I dropped where I stood, flat into the wet, before the part of me still working even told the rest of me why. Two of them, they had stopped. There was a down log and they sat on it with their backs to me, two big shapes. One had lit a smoke, the other had a thermos. Their flashlights were off, pointed at the ground. They were resting, taking a break from hunting me the way two men take a break from stacking wood. And I lay in the muck 20 feet behind them, my face turned sideways, not moving a muscle, listening, because there was nothing else I could do, and because some part of me needed to hear it. They were not talking about me, mostly. That got into me, and it has never come back out. They talked about a transmission. One of them was putting a transmission in a truck, and the other knew a man in a town I had driven through who could get the part cheaper, and they went back and forth on it, easy, the way men talk in a deer blind at dawn. One coughed and spat and said his knees were not made for this anymore. The other said nobody's were. They laughed low. The thermos went between them. And I lay there 20 feet back in the freezing mud, listening to two men who were going to kill me and cook me talk about a transmission and their bad knees. And I understood all the way down that this was a Tuesday to them, a chore. A thing they did on a cold night when the phone tree said a stranger was up the road, the way another man gets off the couch to move his car before the plow comes. There was no hate in it. Hate at least would have made me a person. There was nothing in it but the transmission and the knees and the winter, and I was the winter's business. They would get to me when they got to me. Then one of them said the old man's name, and I stopped breathing for a different reason. He is worked up about this one. The one with the thermos said. Harlan, been off since the yard. You see his face. I seen it, the other one said. It is the plates, Thermos said. State plates, and a dog that walked right to our road, and a whole campground full of troopers writing in their little books. He does not like it. He says one from away goes missing, and it is a search, and it blows over. He says two from away out of the same campground is a line somebody draws on a map. And a line on a map is how a thing that has run 100 years quiet gets found. The other one was quiet a moment. Then he said, so what does he want to do? He wants to think on it, Thermos said. And there was something in how he said it, a little wary, a little put out, the sound of a man who did not fully like where the old man's thinking might go, but would not say so out loud. Harlan always thinks on it. Harlan has kept us careful this long. If Harlan says this one is more trouble on the tree than he is worth in the smoke, then that is what this one is, and we will have driven around all night in the rain for nothing, and I will have a word or two about that, but it will be Harlan's word that goes. More trouble on the tree than he is worth in the smoke. I did not know then that I was hearing my own sentence argued, already being decided on a wet log by two tired men and a thermos, while I lay behind them in the mud. I only knew that the old man held these big men by something that had nothing to do with size, that he was the one who decided, and that for reasons I could not follow, he was not happy. I filed it the way the cold small part of me filed everything, without hope, because what use was it? A man cannot eat a thing he overhears. Then one of them stood and stretched with a groan and clicked his light back on, and I put my face down in the needles and went still as a stone, and the beam passed over the trees above me. After a small forever, they moved off downhill and to the left, talking about the transmission again, and I was alone in the dark with the cold, and one more thing I wished I had never heard. I gave it a long count. Then I went the other way, downhill and to the right, away from them. That is how I found the place. I was not looking for it. I would give a great deal never to have found it. The spruce thinned. The ground rose onto a low hummock of harder earth, an island of it in all that bog, and there were real trees on it, a few old hemlocks the cut had somehow missed, big ones. Under them, the ground was clear and open the way it goes under old evergreens where nothing else grows. It was drier there. Some slow animal part of me wanted the dry and pulled me up onto it before the rest of me caught the smell. Old wood smoke, and under it something turned, a Swedish note gone bad, and by then I was already up among the hemlocks, looking at what was there. There was a structure, not a house, a low open frame of peeled poles, lashed and spiked together, roofed with tin and old tarps, the kind of thing a man builds to work under out of the weather. Under it, tables, plank tables gone black, and hooks. A ridgepole ran the length of it, iron hooks hung off it at an even spacing, the big kind, and a hand winch bolted to one post with a cable and a pulley, troughs cut into the ground. A fire ring off to one side full of cold char with a grate laid over it, buckets, the whole of it laid out clean and orderly and used for years. The wood of the tables worn smooth and pale in the middle, where hands and work had passed over them 10,000 times, and dark at the edges where something had run down and dried and been scrubbed and run down again. Grooves worn into the plank where a blade came down in the same place, over and over, year on year. A place set up by people who knew exactly what they were doing, and did it in quantity, and did it here, on this dry island, away from where anyone lived, out where the smoke would rise into empty country and mean nothing to anyone. I have walked a slaughter floor. Refrigeration takes you into them, into the coolers behind them. I know a working kill floor when I stand on one. This was a working kill floor in the middle of a dead forest, and I had been working a long time. And along the edge of it, where the hard ground met the moss, hung on nails driven into the hemlocks at about the height I would reach without thinking, there were things that were not tools. A boot. A single small rubber boot, sun-faded orange, the kind a kid wears in the mud, cracked hard with age, hung by its pull loop and left there so long the tree had begun to grow around the nail. Farther on, a sneaker, an adult one, gone green with moss. A hat. A jacket sleeve, just the sleeve, the rest of it long gone. A little plastic barrette shaped like a butterfly, the pink faded almost to white, hooked over a twig. They were not thrown there. They were not trash. They were set. Each one, at that reaching height, spaced, kept the way I hung my good tools on the shop pegboard, each in its own outline, where a man could stand back and take in the whole set at a glance. A row of them going off into the dark along the tree line farther than my failing light would carry. Not a pile, a collection. Years of a collection. She was not the first. She was not the 10th. I stood on that hummock with the shake coming up through me in waves, and I understood, the way I had understood in the yard, all at once and too late, that I had not stumbled onto one sick old man and his sick brothers. I had driven up into a thing that had been running since before I was born. Quiet, in country nobody watched, feeding itself off the road, off the lost and the broke down and the ones who wandered in, hanging a small kept piece of each one on a tree, the way another kind of man mounts antlers. And the reason the sheriff would not come up here after dark, the reason the name got said the way people say the name of a bad hospital, the reason none of it was ever in a paper or on the news, was not that nobody knew. It was that too many people knew, had known a long time, and had made their arrangement with it the way people do when a thing is too big and too old and too woven into the place to pull out. I did not do anything in that moment. I did not rage. I did not pull the barrette off its twig and put it in my pocket next to my daughter's shoe. I did not swear any oath. The cold and the horror together had taken me down to something below feeling. I looked at the row of small hung things from very far back inside my own head, the way I had watched my own hands work a compressor on the third straight call with no sleep, doing the job while some part of me stood off to the side and did not believe any of it was mine. And the only clear thought I had was not a brave one, it was this: I am going to be one of these. There is a nail out there in the dark already, at reaching height, and something of mine is going to hang on it, and it is probably the shoe, and it is going to blink there until the battery dies, and then it is just going to hang, and Sarah will never know, and Lily will never be found, and we will both be small faded things on a tree in country nobody comes to. That thought is the closest I came to lying down. It would have been so easy. The warmth was already coming, the lying warmth and the sleepiness behind it, and a voice that was partly the cold and partly the hunter's and partly my own worst self said, "Sit down, you have seen it. There is nothing to be done with what you have seen. Sit down and be warm, and let it be over." I got down on my knees in the moss under those trees, the little hung boot a foot from my face. And I think if the shoe in my pocket had not chosen that moment to do the thing it did, I would have stayed down. It blinked, not from me moving. I was still on my knees, gone soft in the head from the cold, and it blinked anyway. One last weak red pulse of a battery finally giving out, right over my heart. The red of it lit the inside of my coat and lit the little hung boot in front of me from below. It was not Lily doing it. I know that. It was a dying battery and a cracked sensor. I know exactly what it was. But my body did not know. My body felt a red pulse over my heart in the dark and took it for her, for a small hand tugging my coat. "Settle the feet, Daddy. Get up." And I got up. I got up off my knees under the hanging boot, and I turned my back on the kill floor, and I made my dead feet move downhill toward the gray coming into the sky at last. Away. And I did not look at the row of trees again. The gray came up so slow I did not trust it at first. It was not light, it was less dark. A thinning at the tops of the trees, the black going to charcoal, and then to the color of dishwater, shapes getting their edges back. I had been moving downhill through bog and blowdown for what my watch would later tell me was close to 2 hours, though it felt like one long minute and also like the whole rest of my life. And somewhere in there the voices behind me had changed. It took my slow, ruined brain a long time to work out how. They had stopped closing. All night the hunt had been a thing tightening around me, voices to the left and the right working to pinch me between them. Now the voices were behind me and staying behind me. And more than that, they were sliding wide, pulling out toward the sides, toward where I somehow knew the road must be. The ones nearest me had gone quiet and easy, in no hurry at all. I did not understand it. In the state I was in, I took it for luck, for the hunt giving up, the men getting cold and bored and turning back for the fire, and I felt a stupid animal gladness at it and pushed harder toward the growing gray. It was a long time before I understood that they had not given up on anything. They had simply stopped needing to run me. They knew where the woods led out. They knew every place the woods led out because it was their woods and their road and their county, and there is no reason to run a thing downhill toward a fence you already own, so they let me go. They peeled off and let the country and the cold do the work, and they went to wait in the places a broken man comes out. And the only reason I am here to tell any of this is that I did not come out where they were waiting. I came out in the one wrong place, and the wrong place saved me. For a while, my boots went in the bog. The left one started to pull loose in a stretch of black sucking muck that took me to the knee, and I did the wrong thing. I yanked against it, and the mud kept the boot and gave me back a bare foot in freezing water. Then I could not find the boot again, my hands down in that ice muck, feeling around and finding nothing, and I made the choice to leave it. 100 yards on the other one went the same way, and I let it go without a fight. So I came the last of that country in my socks, and then in one sock, and then in bare feet, over ground that was half ice water and half broken branch and stone. My feet cut open, and I did not feel most of it, which was the cold being merciful in the one way it is merciful. I left a trail of blood I could not see and could not have helped. And I kept on, because the shoe was in my pocket, and the gray was ahead, and there was nothing else in the whole world but the next step and the one after it. The trees changed. That was how I knew I was near something. The scab woods gave way in the last 100 yards to a strip of planted spruce, straight even rows of a thing put in on purpose, a windbreak or a reseeding, trees all the same age standing in lines. A straight line of trees means a person made it. And past the last row, the gray was not just gray, it was open, a flat open lightness that was sky sitting down on flat ground. And I heard, far off and then not so far, the specific sound of a car, tires on wet pavement, a hiss and a whoosh, and gone. A road, a real road, a paved road, out of the cutover, out of their country, a road that went to towns and hospitals and telephones and the ordinary lit world, where nobody could simply do to a little girl what they had done up here, and hang her shoe on a tree. I came out of the last row of planted spruce, and there was a shallow ditch full of dead grass, and then the road, 2 lanes. A faded yellow line down the middle, wet and shining in the first light, running off straight in both directions between walls of trees. Empty. I did not walk to it, my legs were done. I came down the little bank of the ditch in a fall that was mostly controlled, and I crawled the last of it, up the far bank, my cut hands flat on the cold, wet asphalt. The most beautiful thing I had ever touched. Machine-made, flat, part of the world of roads and rules. I got myself up onto the shoulder, and my body simply stopped. I could not make it do one more thing. I lay down on the gravel edge of that road on my side, knees up, hands between them, curled around the pocket with the shoe in it the way I had lain curled around it in the spruce, and I shook. And I watched the yellow line in the empty road, and I waited for a car, because a car meant a person, and a person meant help. And I did not yet know the last thing there was to know about that country. That up there, on that road, at that hour, a car did not mean help. It meant the last of them. The car came from the north, from the way I had not come, and I saw the light bar on the roof before I could make out the rest of it, and I started to cry, right there on the gravel, because it was a police car. A sheriff's cruiser, brown and tan, county markings on the door, slowing, its headlights washing over me where I lay on the shoulder. And every broken piece of me that had been holding together on will alone let go at once. The law. The ordinary lit world had sent a car. I got one arm up off the ground and waved it. The cruiser slowed and stopped on the far shoulder with its engine running. The door opened. A deputy got out and stood behind his open door a moment, looking at me across the road the way any cop looks at a thing he has found on the ground at first light. Then he came across. An older man, 60 maybe, heavy-set, in a tan county jacket with the collar up against the rain. He crouched down next to me on the gravel with a grunt, one knee popping. He put a hand on my shoulder. His face was creased and calm and kind. "Easy now," he said. "Easy. I have got you. What in the world happened to you, son?" And I told him, God help me, I told him everything, all of it, in a flood, kneeling there on the shoulder, clutching his sleeve. The campground, and Lily, and the dog, and the scent ending on the cutover. Pelletier telling me not to go, and going anyway. The man at the pit, with the kind eyes, the barrel, the coat, the shoe. I got the shoe out of my pocket with my ruined hands and held it up to him in the gray light, the cracked pink shoe with the unicorn. I told him about the trucks and the woods and the men who tracked me all night talking about the meat, the kill floor, the row of small things on the trees, all of it, everything, poured out of me onto that calm old man in the county jacket, and he listened. He listened to all of it. He did not once tell me I was raving. He nodded, and his hand stayed on my shoulder. When I ran down at last, empty, shaking, he looked at the shoe in my hand for a moment. Then he looked at me. All right, he said. All right now, you are safe. We are going to get this sorted out. He helped me up. He was strong, that old man. He got me up off the ground and walked me across the road, holding most of my weight, and he opened the back door of the cruiser and helped me in, out of the rain, onto the hard plastic seat behind the cage. It was warm in there. The heat was running. He took a folded wool blanket off the front seat and reached back and put it over me himself, tucked it around me. And what that did to me, being tucked into a blanket by a calm, strong man with a badge after that night, is hard to hold in the mouth. It felt like being a child. It felt like the thing was finally out of my hands, like I could stop at last. And I started crying again out of pure relief, and he shut the door soft, and he went around and got in the front, and the cruiser pulled out onto the road, and the heat came up over me, and I stopped shaking for the first time in hours, and I let my eyes close, and I felt safe. I felt safe. I hold on to that for about 10 minutes in the back of that car I felt safe, because it is the last time in my life I have felt it. A man should get to feel it at least once more before the end, even if it is a lie, and it was a lie. But I did not know it was a lie, and so it was real for 10 minutes, and nobody can take those 10 minutes from me. They are the worst thing I own. They are also, God forgive me, the last good thing. It was the radio that started it. Some small cold part of me, the part that does not fully shut off even when the rest of me has collapsed, was lying there in the warmth, half hearing the police radio up front. The crackle and chirp of it, dispatch traffic, other units. The ordinary sound of the law being the law across a county at dawn. And after a while, that part of me noticed that the deputy had not touched it. He had found a man half dead on the shoulder of a road, a missing child's father raving about murder, and he had not picked up his radio and called it in. No unit responding, no ambulance rolling. No be advised. He had put me in the car and driven, and the radio just chattered on by itself, other people's traffic, none of it about me. A cop who finds what he found calls it in before he does anything else. It is the first thing they do. It is bone deep in them. This one had not done it. And the small, cold part of me lying under that blanket filed that, quietly, without waking the rest of me, the way it files a compressor cycling a half second too long. Then the turn. I felt the car slow and turn, and I opened my eyes and looked out the window at the gray morning going by, and I did not know that country, but I knew the sun. Even under cloud, there is a lightness where the sun is coming up, and it had been on my right when we started, which meant we were headed south, toward town, toward the world. And after the turn, it was behind us. We had come off the paved road. The ride had changed, the smoothness gone out of it, gravel under the tires now, and the walls of trees had come back close on both sides. The light where the sun was climbing was behind the car, which meant we were going north again, back up, back into it. I sat up under the blanket. My heart, which had finally slowed, began to climb again, slow, disbelieving, my ruined mind, not wanting to build the thought. I said, through a throat like broken glass, "This is not the way to town." The deputy's eyes came up into the rearview mirror. Kind eyes, creased and calm. "No," he said, "it is not." He said it gently. He said it the exact way the old man at the pit had said the little yellow coat girl. No heat in it, no cruelty, nothing but a settled patience. A man telling me a true thing he had told other men in this same mirror on this same road. And I understood. In the cold, complete way I had understood twice already that night and refused twice to believe that I had gotten it wrong from the start. I thought I had escaped the woods. I thought the road was the edge of their country. But the road was not the edge of anything. There was no edge. The county jacket was the same country as the canvas apron. The badge was the same as the long fork. I had not been found by the law. I had been found by the last man on the shift, come to collect what the night's hunt had run down to the fence, exactly where they knew it would come out. And the reason he had listened so kindly to all of it, every word, the campground and the dog and the barrel and the shoe, was not that he believed me. It was that he already knew all of it. He had known it before I was born. He was just letting me finish. I went for the door. There was no handle on the inside. Of course there was not. It was the back of a cruiser, built to hold a man. There was the cage between me and him, steel mesh, built to hold a man. I threw myself against the door and clawed at the window and screamed, and he drove, calm, both hands on the wheel, watching the road, letting me wear myself out against the cage, the same way they had let me wear myself out in the woods, because there was nowhere for any of it to go. They had built the whole night to be a box with no inside handle. I had run all the way through it thinking I was getting out, and every wall I had climbed had been a wall of the same box. I do not know how long I fought the cage. Not long. There was nothing left in me. I slid down against the door and held the shoe to my chest with both hands and watched the back of that calm old head under the county cap driving me back up into the cutover as the gray light came. And I thought about Sarah getting the call that would never come. And I thought a thing I am not proud of. At least I know now. At least I found her. At least I am going where she went. It was not much, but it was the only thing in reach, and I held it the way I held the shoe. The cabin sat at the end of a side road a few miles up, a low building of stained logs with a metal roof, and a radio mast behind it, and a propane tank, and a generator shed, and a sign by the door naming it the county dispatch station. It looked like exactly what it said it was, which was the whole trick of it, the same trick as the kind eyes and the county jacket. There was a plowed lot and a flagpole with the rope slapping in the wind, and a couple of county trucks parked nose in. The most ordinary official little building in the world. And that was the worst thing about it, because it meant it was real. It meant this was not some hidden cabin of outlaws, but a working piece of the county with a budget and a sign and a flag. And the man walking me toward the door on my ruined feet had a real badge and a real key and a real place to put me. He was gentle the whole time. That never stopped. He got me out of the back of the cruiser with a hand under my arm and walked me across the cold lot slow, letting me lean on him, murmuring, "There we go, easy, almost there." He brought me into a front room with a counter and a coffee maker and a wall of radio equipment and a wood stove ticking with heat, warm and dry and lit with ordinary fluorescent light. If I had walked into that room any other day of my life, I would have felt nothing but relief. He sat me in a wooden chair by the stove. He got a first aid kit off a shelf. He knelt and looked at my cut feet and clicked his tongue at the state of them, the way a decent man does, and he wrapped them, both careful and competent, gauze and tape. He put a paper cup of hot coffee in my shaking hands and folded my fingers around it. "You drink that," he said. "You are going into shock. We have got to get you warm before anything else." This is the part nobody believes. He took care of me. For the better part of an hour, that old man treated me with more plain animal kindness than I have gotten from most people who meant me well. He was not playing with me. A man playing with his food is cruel, and there was no cruelty in him, none, and there had been none in the man at the pit either. It took me the longest time. It took me that whole warm hour to understand that the kindness and the thing they were going to do to me were not in conflict for these people, had never been in conflict, that they could bind a man's feet and warm his hands and mean it, and also do the other thing and mean that too, because to them the other thing was not cruelty. It was just the winter, and the winter is not cruel. The winter is only the winter. Then he stood, and his knees popped, and he said, "I have got to make a couple calls. You sit tight and get warm." And he put me in the back room. He did it kindly. "For your safety," he said. He said it the way he had said everything, no lie in his face that I could find, and maybe there was no lie in it, maybe it was for my safety, in some way of thinking I could not follow. A small room off the back, a records room, gray metal shelves of binders, a bare table, one window high up in the wall with wire mesh in the glass. He sat me down and put a wool blanket around my shoulders again and told me to rest. He went out. He shut the door, and I heard the lock go over, a dead bolt, the solid heavy sound of it, then his footsteps going back up front, unhurried, and the clink of him at the coffee pot, and then his voice, low and easy, on a telephone, not the radio, a telephone. I could not make out the words through the door, only the shape of them, friendly, short, the tone of a man making a call he had made many times, telling a few people a thing they would be glad to hear. I sat in that locked gray room, the blanket around me, the heat finally in my body, and I did the only thing there was left to do, which was wait, and know the window was too high, too small. Wire mesh set into the glass. The door was steel in a steel frame. I was a man with wrapped feet and nothing left in his arms, and there was no fight in that room and no way out of it. I knew that. I stopped looking. There is a quiet that comes after you stop looking for the way out. It is not peace. It is worse than fear. The cold, small part of me that fixes broken things went around that room one last time, the way it goes around a dead machine, not hunting an exit anymore, just because it does not know how to quit. Hinges on the wrong side of the door. Mesh too tight to get a hand through even if the glass broke. Shells bolted to the wall so nothing came loose to swing. It read all of it. It filed all of it. A diagnosis of a thing that could not be fixed. And then even that part of me went dark, and I was just a man on a chair, waiting. I thought about Lily. Not the barrel. Not the shoe. None of the night. I went all the way back, before any of it, to the lake, to the one frog she caught and let go, because it looked scared. Her small, serious face bent over her cupped hands. I held that instead of the room. And if I stayed inside it hard enough, the room got farther away, and I understood this was the last thing my mind would ever do for me. Take me out of that room. Put me on the muddy edge of that lake with my daughter. So that is where I went, on the edge of the lake, with her, watching a scared thing get its life back. The light in the high window went from gray to thin white. Morning, full up over the cutover. I listened to the sounds of a man tidying a room and setting out for company. I held the dead shoe in my lap. I waited. Then I heard the engines. They came up the side road one after another, the same big motors that had come up the creek to the pit. They slowed. They turned into the lot. They shut off, one and then another and then another. 4, 5 vehicles, doors, boots on the plowed gravel. The front door of the cabin opened and let in a gust of cold and a lot of voices. Men's voices, easy and glad. Neighbors coming in out of the weather to a warm room where they were expected. I heard them stamp the mud off their boots on the mat. I heard the deputy greet them, unhurried, a host. I heard the kind old voice of the man from the pit say something low that got a laugh out of the others. Then I heard a woman. That was the worst of it. A woman among them, ordinary, cheerful, saying she had brought rolls, saying she hoped she was not late. And then I heard the plates, the dry scrape of a stack of paper plates pulled off a shelf, the hollow rattle of a bag of plastic forks and knives tipped into a bowl. I heard the deputy counting them out onto the counter, easy, the unhurried way a host sets a table for people he is glad to feed. 1, 2, 3. Passing them down the line, hand to hand, and each pair of hands that took a plate said thank you, quiet, polite, the way people do at a church supper. Paper plates, plastic forks. The most harmless sound there is on this earth. That light, hollow clatter, and it came through the steel door of that gray room, and it was the sound of the end of me. And I stood there, and I could not make my body stop hearing it. Footsteps came to my door. More than one set. They stopped. I heard the old man from the pit. Closed now, on the other side of the steel, kind and easy. Well, he said, let us have a look at him. And, the deputy answered, and there was warmth in it, real warmth, the warmth of a man glad to have his people under one roof on a cold morning. He said, glad you could all come out. Winters get real lean up here in the cut over. Let us see what he weighs.